Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Nick Rohn, Director of Technology for the Asset Leadership Network, and I'm excited for a program with Lindsay Ziegler, President of the Andrew James Advisory Group and Chair of the U.S. Technical Advisory Group to ISO Technical Committee 251. And Rich Culbertson is also joining us today, as well as Chris Golly, and we will get to them in just a moment. But we want to thank first our patron members, Jacobs, Mantech Onuma, ABS Quality Evaluations, and CGI, as well as all our organizational members, especially the Andrew James Advisory Group. And if you're looking at this list and wondering how you can get on it, please reach out. We would love to grow the list of organizational members or patrons, and really believe that us and our members have a lot to offer to any organization. So please reach out and let's talk about how we can work together to advance your mission success. And with that, we'll say we have some upcoming events. June 4th, we have a Australian Asset Management Council event on identifying fraud and corruption. Peter Kohler, if you're familiar, who's been on this program a number of times, will be speaking at that, as well as someone else that we have not had on this program. Maybe Mike will talk about that. Other than that, we have ALN Thursday at 3 next week with Steve Course. It's been about a year, I think, since we talked to Steve, but he has a really interesting neurodivergent perspective. And so looking forward to that discussion next week. And then the following week, we have an exciting ALN Insurance Asset Leadership Board launch. And they'll be talking about leveraging enterprise asset management to optimize property insurance and risk management. Executive Director, Mike, you want to say anything else?
Yes, thank you, Nick. And Sean Reeves will be joining Peter Kohler. They have both identified in the course of their long careers corruption and have had some pretty intense results from that. So they're going to be talking about those issues. And then that's the first of two. The next one will be government officials talking about actions in place in Australia and the United States to address fraud, waste, and abuse, corruption. And then, yes, Steve Course is a neurodivergent facility manager who brings a real interesting perspective on involving all relevant parties. And I've talked with him a little bit about what he's been up to. It's going to be an exciting call. And then the insurance board, this is real important development that the ALN is helping push in the United States. Other countries have very specific ways of reducing insurance costs from the proper asset management. And we're really excited to be focusing on this part in the US. And all of this is due to ISO 55000 and the developments that keep coming. So in order to know how to do asset management at a high level, it's very good to take the ALN A55K professional certification training, and the next one is in June, coming up right around the corner. So you can talk to Lindsay about that after the program if you're interested in getting your team up to speed on the latest in ISO 55001 and 2 developments. And we're very happy to have Lindsay, who is the chair of the US TAG, to TC 251 for asset management. So Lindsay, who we're chairing the US team in Oslo earlier this month. And how is the weather? Let's start with the first thing we're all curious about.
The weather in Oslo was perfect the whole week we were there. And 40s and 50s overnight, low 70s during the day, clear blue skies, and their skies are really clear blue. I think primarily because they have very little vehicular traffic in the city, and what there is 90% electric. They have a lot of mass transit, and all of it is electric. The ferries, the buses, the trams, and the trains are all electric. So they're really an excellent model for how to get and keep your skies really blue.
Excellent.
And so I averaged walking 2.5 miles a day while I was there,
Wonderful.
which is about a mile and a half more than I average normally.
Okay.
And so I completely understand why people there are, as a general rule, very fit.
Oh, excellent.
They're walking. Um, so
So as the chair, you were involved for the US delegation, you were involved in a lot of the activities. Rich Culbertson was kind of focused on Working Group 5, I believe.
mhm.
Chris Golly was not there, but he has joined us. Why don't you give us an overview, what you saw from the chair position, then Rich can come in and say what he
Mhm.
saw, and then Chris can comment about what this all means to the US Technical Action Group and us going forward.
Okay. So this is only the third in-person plenary that we've had since the pandemic. And I think this one went the smoothest of the three. We did the first one here in Philadelphia, and we had technical issues that we had to overcome because it was the first one after a long layoff. And that one worked very well. And what that established is when you are all together for a week, you can get a lot done. I was a member of Working Group 6. Working Group 6 is has last year we completed the revision to 55,001, which is the requirements for asset management systems.
Mhm.
And we are now working on 55,002, which is kind of the how. It's got a lot of guidance, it's got a lot of best practices, it's got a lot of lists in it. So I tell people in my classes that it's kind of like an encyclopedia. You're going to use it to look stuff up, but don't memorize everything because that would be silly. So, some things that happened during the course of the week, there were two new subgroups created, and one of them is an ad hoc group. It's ad hoc group 5 to determine what to do about asset lifecycle management and whether, in fact, there is um, enough material to create an additional standard in the 55,000 series, talking strictly about asset life cycles. There's also a new task group created to deal with issues of audit to the ISO TC 251 products. So there was a lot of conversation about how should it be audited, who should audit. There's a lot of guidance on audit, and in particular, if you look aside at ISO 9000, which is kind of the granddaddy of all the ISO management system standards, there's a lot of good information there about how to conduct audits, but it is not necessarily geared towards auditing asset management. So the question that's before task group 4 is what do we do about that? Again, is there enough that we need to have a whole separate standard for it? Should we write a technical standard? Should we write a public available specification? So there's a lot of different possibilities. And those two groups are just now forming based on the decisions of the plenary Friday, what was it, the 15th?
Okay.
16th.
That says a lot about the evolution of standards, and it's really encouraging to see how those who are involved in this, and I'm sure you saw a lot of old friends and familiar faces.
Yeah,
So people are really focused on this, and just because the new standard has been revised doesn't mean they're giving up. They're keeping at it, and how do we use this to make things better? It's really
yeah,
encouraging.
yeah. So the other thing that happened was there were two groups that were disbanded. So there was task group 3 on sustainability, That was disbanded because there is a new working group created, and I believe it's either 11 or 12, um, to develop a standard or initially a public available specification on the topic of sustainability as it relates to asset management. The
Wow.
other group that got disbanded was Work Group 4. So Work Group 4 was initially thought of as a group to kind of look at new product proposals but it was more of a governance group. And it was decided at the plenary session that all of that responsibility could be folded into the chairman's advisory group. So those things that Work Group 4 was looking at doing have now been folded into the chairman's advisory group. In terms of specific committees, Work Group 3 is all about communication, and they are in charge of both internal and external communication. And the people in our Work Group 3, in the TC 251 Work Group 3, are just phenomenal. TC 251 has its own website, and it is the most active of all the technical committee websites within ISO.
Excellent. Who are some of the people from the US tag that are involved in that communications committee?
The one that we hear most from is Jack Kelly.
Excellent.
Um, the chairman, I can't pronounce his last name, and his first name is quite a challenge too. His name is Bodevine.
Ah,
He is Dutch, but he lives in Canada.
yeah, it was with Copperleaf, but Copperleaf got bought by somebody else. I forget the name of the company that it's with now. Yeah.
You know,
He used to work for
yeah,
companies. Yeah.
I do know I'm overthinking it somewhat, but I just.
Excellent. So a lot of evolution and development.
Mhm. Now, Working Group 6, which is the group that I'm in,
Mhm.
a year ago we released 55,001, the 2024 revision. And then we rolled immediately into revising 55,002. And what we accomplished during this week in the meetings that we had was we took our working product from a working draft that is held very tightly internally to our work group to a committee draft. And the committee draft then will be, it has to go through the ISO editors first, but then it will be released to the entire TC for comment. And so hopefully they won't be too brutal on us, but we hope they'll be nice. Working Group 5,
Is that the one Rich was in?
that's the one Rich was in. Rich, do you want to talk about what WG5 is working on?
You're muted, Rich. Rich, hold on, Rich. Let us unmute you. Or if you can, Rich, just click yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Ah,
Yeah, Work Group 5 has to do with the financial and non-financial aspects of asset management. And we initially issued ISO 55010 on that topic. And the primary things done this time were two major things. One was try to make ISO 55000 go from a specification up to a standard. Now, part of that was, and we agreed during that meeting, is that less is more. In other words, that do the minimum amount, since it's already been voted on as an international specification, to don't mess with it too much, because every time you mess with a standard, it's an opportunity for people to not adopt the standard or modify it, and at the same time it's expensive to change the primary content of standards. Therefore, it's important, since this was just approved, this last July, to go ahead but do the minimum to make it a standard rather than a specification. The other thing which we went through is that some of the next things we would be working on, and I think this is also very significant, and that is go ahead and start preparing to look at how to manage intangible assets. That's not done yet, but the fact is the management of intangible assets is just as important or more important than the management of tangible assets. There's certainly more money involved in the intangible than tangible. Historically, however, for accounting purposes and also for property management purposes, it has to do with the management of tangible assets, both real and personal property. So this will change some of that. And what we're trying to do is make sure that organizations take a look at the full entity and to a derived value, which would include both the tangible and the intangible assets.
So let's just reinforce your point that the majority of financial value from S&P 500 and Dow Jones for all those companies is in their intangible assets, their patents, copyrights, and intellectual property.
And it may even be higher than what they've documented. Right now, it's at like 90% intangible versus 10% tangible. Some of the main things that, of course, are intangible assets that are not declared, or things kind of like unrecognized capital gain. Well, that's a big deal. And should you recognize unrecognized capital gain? Well, the answer is sure, because if most of your value is in that area, you better be managing it and recognizing what's the best way to manage that intangible, unrecognized capital gain. There's the same thing with a certain amount of intellectual knowledge. For accounting purposes, for example, research and development is not capitalized. But the fact is that successful research and development is certainly worthwhile and should be managed, but it's not on the balance sheet.
So
The only way those
the
things
work group decided to focus on that. Is there
Right.
ways people can get involved in that?
Yes, join the TC 251 and become a member of Work Group 5.
Okay.
And
Yep.
it's simple as that, and I highly recommend that. It'll probably heat up, particularly next year. Next year, our next meeting will be in Kyoto, Japan. So if you want to,
Rich, you stole my thunder.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to upstage you. But here again, there'll be a lot for more you to say, Lindsay, about Kyoto. That's it's a very nice city. It's an old city, but at the same time, I really highly recommend Japan stuff. But more importantly, is Work Group 5 and how we're going to manage intangibles.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rich. So continuing on, Working Group 7 is the group that was in charge of 55011, and 55011 is asset management and public policy. So that particular standard has a different audience. So the audience for 55011 is not asset managers per se. It is governments and people who are in a position to advocate with governments for asset management and people who have influence within governments. So what Working Group 7 has been working on, first of all, they're working on translations. There was a lot of progress made on the Chinese translation during the plenary sessions. But the other thing they're working on is they're working with Working Group 3, which, if you remember, is our communications group, to develop a communications and marketing strategy for 55011 so that we can get those in the public sector, in the government sector, to begin to understand why asset management and asset management systems are important. And so that task then is what Work Group 7 has taken up to work on over the next year. And then in the next in-person plenary, there will be a decision on whether Work Group 7 is ready to be disbanded or whether its work is complete. Now, 8, 9, and 10 have already been disbanded earlier this year, but we have a relatively new one, Work Group 11, and they are working on a publicly available specification on sustainability. And so that one, I really look forward to seeing that particular result. And
Yeah,
they
and
may
again-
actually, there's some of the things that they're facing are, so do we want just sustainability as it applies to asset management? How do we acknowledge that sustainability is a topic that cuts across everything? So there's some liaison work that needs to happen there. There's some real heavy thinking that needs to happen in terms of sustainability.
Excellent.
So that's where we are with the working groups. Now, as Rich stated, the next in-person plenary, which will be in the fall of 2026, will be in Kyoto, Japan. And the one after that in 2027 will be somewhere in the UK. And a number of us are trying to advocate for Scotland because Scotland's pretty cool and London, been there, done that.
Yes.
Um,
Summer would be good too. You don't want that in the fall.
Well, fall is okay in Scotland particularly if you're either along the coast or in southern Scotland.
Okay,
I wouldn't go way up into the Highlands in November. That would be
not good.
silliness.
Yes.
So the way that this is working is what we seem to have settled on is one in-person and one virtual plenary every year. And the virtuals are in the fall and the in-persons are typically in the spring.
Excellent.
So and we feel very strongly about the value of the in-person plenary sessions. So much more work gets done when you're there for 8 hours a day, 5 days in a row, immersed in the work.
Excellent.
So we feel that it was a very, very productive plenary session. And we also had a lot of fun. Some of the things that our very gracious hosts arranged for us on Sunday morning, there was an expedition to an island out in the middle of the fjord that we hiked around basically and saw a bunch of cottages that have been there for so long that most of the cottages have been in their family for at least 5 generations. Very cool exercise combined with a history lesson.
Excellent.
On Monday evening, we climbed up the roof of the Oslo Opera House.
Oh, wow.
So the Opera House is built with a roof like this. And it's marble, it's white marble. And you can get to the top of the roof where there are fabulous views. But to do that, you have to climb up that white marble slope. So that was physically a challenge, but very cool. And then on Tuesday, we had our annual wine tasting. On Wednesday, there was a guided tour of the Nobel Peace Center, which is down by the harbor. It's sometimes referred to as the Award for Peace created by dynamite, because Alfred Nobel, who was the founder of the Nobel Prizes, was the inventor of dynamite.
Yes.
So yeah. So we
Well,
had
it's good to know,
Yeah.
that people who commit their time to this are not just working those 8-hour days that you're talking about, but are socializing and getting some experience there.
Oh
too.
yeah, and we would go up. We went out in groups for dinners and just had a really wonderful time and wonderful experience. So
Excellent.
it was a really nicely done meeting, and our hosts were very gracious and had everything planned out for us.
Excellent. So Chris, golly, you're an active member in the TC, but you did not attend. Can you say a little bit about joining the TC, ways people can do that, and then talk a little bit about what you see the impact of these developments could have?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and first, thank you, Rich and Lindsay. You basically represent an US TAC very well. And
Thank
thank you also that we had everyday meeting with updates and so on, like few groups. So this is really well appreciated. I joined US TAC, I don't remember when, probably 2012. And probably my first plenary meeting was, 2012 in Prague, in Europe. I attended many plenary meetings. I agree with you that what can be accomplished in one day during plenary meetings, face to face, cannot be accomplished in 12 months' time. So that's how it works. And it's not only that you meet and talk, but it's afterwards all the activities and so on, and basically the camaraderie and so on is amazing. When you can discuss something during the lunchtime, after lunchtime, during the dinner and so on. So I know how important it is. So
And
first of all, thank you.
People can join by joining ANSI, American National Standard. Is
You
that
don't
correct?
have to join ANSI. You can contact US TAC directly to join US TAC.
Okay. Excellent.
So
So the person you would contact, it would be Rich would be one contact. He's our membership chair. I'm a contact as the chairman of the TC or the US tag. Our admin, who is provided by the ASTM, and bless them for that. They are
Yeah.
wonderfully supportive of us. Her name is Norma Nimmerichter. So you could contact her, but it's probably easier to find my email or Rich's.
I'm going to put all of these emails up. People can have their choice.
you can contact me too.
Yep, you can contact Chris.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And
I would
then-
encourage everybody who is interested in asset management to join the US TAC, because that's the only way to influence those standards.
Now it sounds like there were web meetings for the US delegates that or US tag members who weren't able to attend in person. So Chris, what did you get from those, and what do you think these developments will mean for asset management?
That's correct. We had a daily meetings. I think I attended 3 or 4 every day, because as a member of work groups, I attended the work group meetings and also meeting organized by Lindsay, that she was updating us on everything. So I think the development was great. I believe that we are advancing the standard, and yeah, I'm not sure what to say more, but I encourage everybody to join US TAC to influence the standard. I believe we are advancing this in the right direction. One of the things that I'm a little bit concerned, that it seems that some members of TC251 are trying to do everything too much, basically too much. New standards for everything, and we cannot do it, basically. That's my personal opinion. I don't know if Rich and Lindsay agree, but that's how.
Well, yeah, we can keep those for offline discussions.
Yeah.
And but Rich, do you want to comment on how you see the evolution of the standards going?
Well, I think, first of all, I think that when you have a standard, it creates a plan. A plan is certainly better than no plan or an ad hoc plan. And so this is establishing a framework of how to manage assets. And I think that it's really important to understand, that, since 1995, with the World Trade Organization and standards, that the living standards of the world have increased. And regardless of where that, and there's a lot of political stuff, but the fact is, people of the world are better off now than they were then. We also think that with good asset management, people will also continue to live better lives. We also learn, for example, like Norway, they have a sovereign wealth fund.
Yeah.
I know Trump has talked about something kind of like that, but what that means for them, they have like $1 trillion in that sovereign wealth fund. So every citizen in Norway, I think, has a share of that of $325,000, and so that's another way of managing the welfare of a nation. Dag Detter, when he came to talked about the wealth of nations and
Yes.
how, in fact, nations can capitalize on their existing wealth. Well, it's important to take a look at all these different things, both individually at the organization level, but also at the state and federal level as well.
And you believe the TC is helping organizations do that by evolving the standards?
The more we talk about it, the more we compare where we are versus where we want to be, the better we get.
And the more people that get involved, the better. And Mark DeClerc asks about, are you looking for a balanced number of members on each committee? Or are you looking for committees that are looking for members?
I think the first criteria is passion.
Okay, Lindsay, is there a need?
There's always a need because we have, as I said, we have 2 new subcommittees that are recruiting for members right now. And we have several that are still currently active, where additional involvement is always helpful. So I wanted to just touch base on what Chris said because he's got a point. One of the things that happened in 2024 was our technical committee released, I think, 5 standards all at once.
Yeah.
And that is too much. There were people just got burned out. And so one of the things that we talk about and we kind of struggle with is we have all these wonderful ideas of things that we would like to get done, but we're very cognizant that we don't want to burn people out. We don't want to, we overwhelmed ISO's capability of editing, translating, and releasing these standards. So we don't want to do that either. ISO doesn't particularly care for that. And so we always have to kind of juggle that we want to do all these cool new things. We want to do asset lifecycle management. We want to talk about sustainability. We want to talk about audit. How much can we do at once? And it's not whether we'll do it, it's how much of it we can do at once. And the more people we can get involved, the more we're going to be able to accomplish things that we would like to accomplish. So I think that was basically where Chris was going with that. Am I right, Chris?
Yeah, yes, you're right. And also, to answer these questions about balancing groups, I think what we need to do is if somebody joins the US TAG, they need to understand what groups we have in TC 251, what the expertise is, and as Rich said, what their passion is and so on, and what they can contribute best in certain areas.
Mhm.
And I think that's very, very important. People have a vast experience, and from, I sorry to say this, but I live on 3 continents, work on 6, seen so many different things, and yeah, so we need more experience and basically wider wider view of everything and so on. So I would encourage everybody in US who is listening to it or outside US to join the committee and contribute, because
Yeah.
the so thing is, I've been for too long on this committee.
Well, let me ask you, Chris.
And one the thing, sorry, Mike, just I finished this. And we tend to have tunnel vision. We need new, fresh blood and younger people. That's all I can say.
So what has been the benefit to you, in addition to seeing lovely places and meeting intelligent, nice people around the world? How has involvement in the TC helped you in your work?
For me, I
Yes.
retired now, so I can't say, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot, attending so many plenary meetings around the world and meeting people. I learned a lot, and it opened my eye on, as you know, on the asset management. So that's why you always learn something. You always learn something new, and that's very, very, very important. Right?
Okay,
But I'm not working, so I cannot apply this, in my workplace.
but you have in the past. That's what I was
Yes,
asking about.
exactly,
Lindsay
exactly.
and Rich, Rich and Lindsay, do you each want to talk about what you've learned over the years and how it's
Yes,
applied and helped you?
yeah, I think some things which you go through, it just confirms some of the things which you already know or should know. One of the things that we've gone through in this last few years as far as organizational management, and I always right now I start out with the COSO internal control standards. If you have that framework to work from, effective, efficient operations, reliable reporting, compliance laws and regulations, those things impact everything. And so asset management falls under the standards under all three of those. And so if you operate with that framework, the chance of being successful are increased tremendously. On the other hand, if organizations say, well, I'll just go ahead and fake it, well, you probably won't wander into good things when that occurs. And so these things should be a way to systemically improve organizations. So that, in fact, a way to increase and to achieve value from those organizations.
Excellent. Lindsay, I see you nodding, so we'll let you have the last say before we wind up.
Okay, well, I'm agreeing with Rich that as you go through working on these standards, you're going to run into things that you're like, oh, yeah, well, I kind of knew that, or I totally knew that, or maybe I kind of knew that, but I never put it that way. I never heard it put that way. And you're also going to run into, ooh, I hadn't thought about that, but that's really good. And sorry about the cough. I did pick up a cold in Norway, I regret to say.
I hope you're feeling better.
Oh, much.
Good.
And by the way, the other thing that's great about Oslo, the coffee is wonderful. And I drank a lot of it. But yeah, you learn things as you go along, and I am able to take the things that I have learned then, and as we're teaching these classes, the content gets richer and richer because we have learned more just from being associated with working on the standards. The other thing that you learn is how to work delicately with an international group of people with very
Yes.
strong opinions
And different cultures.
and different cultures. Yes.
Yeah, and different languages and people who cannot translate certain things. I'm not a native speaker, but I understand certain things. Yeah.
And translation is one of the things that you have to bear in mind when you're working on a standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been more than once when I've seen a phrase in a draft And I've commented, that's fine, but that doesn't work in French.
Yeah.
And I can see how that applies directly to doing the work you do at your job, team building, reaching out with consultants and others, and quite a bit of direct benefit to anybody's work life if they volunteer for these activities. So
Oh, yeah.
thank you all for the amazing work you've done on the ISO asset management standards. And Lindsay, we're gonna plug the course next week. I hope there's still a seat or two available that starts. If anybody's interested in learning more details about the new standards, they can reach out to you. Your email has been shared a couple times. And so we encourage people to reach out to Lindsay about both the TC and about learning about the standards. So thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, next week we'll be talking with Steve Course, and then that's next Thursday at 3. Next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Very interesting program starting on corruption that has been uncovered through proper asset management. And I think that's a real important topic. And these people who have done this and been through it and dealt with the difficulties, there's a lot of challenges when you are the person who is saying, the emperor has no clothes, and we've got people who've dealt with that directly that you can learn from. So hope you will join us for that. And again, next week, Thursday at 3. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye for now.